Welcome to UA Insiders by Appsumer, a new series of podcasts, interviews and private events for senior UA leaders at mobile apps.
Great to have you here today, Thiago. It would be great to maybe start off by hearing a little bit more about your role at Peak Labs and what you guys do in the UA team.
Cool. Hi. Thiago Monteiro, I'm Director of Growth. So Peak Labs, we have one main product that's our Peak Brain Training. It's a subscription-based app, which is a gym for your brain. And basically, we have around 43 mini games that we develop with different universities around the world. They're proven to help you, improve your memory skills or your language or your logic ability. We are also now launching a new product as well called Lais, Sleep Better, which is a subscription-based product as well that use different types of techniques to help you sleep better, hopefully.
Great stuff. And tell us a little bit more about, if you can share with us, what's your primary role as the head of growth? What are the main KPIs that you guys are working towards?
Sure. So on the growth team, so our main objective, the trick's on the name, so it's to ensure that our products grow and we increase the number of subscribers that we have. So obviously the rate of subscribers gain is a very important one. We also deal with the churn rate and how we can affect churn. And at the end, the main goal is revenue, how much money we can generate for the business in a profitable way. Yeah.
Great stuff. And in terms of how your team is structured as well, I know you mentioned before that you guys are building out your team as well, and it's evolved quite a lot since you've joined.
Yeah, so when I joined in, we just had a user acquisition team. We didn't have a growth team, and we just two people, so a lead and someone helping. Now we have it's me leading the team. We have two campaign managers, one CRM manager, 2.5 designers, and hopefully we're trying to get a few more headcounts for data and tech.
So you mentioned you are a big fan of in-housing. Is that the same with your tech stack? And are you able to share a little bit of what that tech stack looks like today for you guys?
Sure. So we try to keep everything in-house. So our tech stack in general is very basic. It's MMP and we connect directly to the networks. What we do afterwards, we add a layer, of course, we have Snowplow to gather the data to our data warehouse, which then we use Looker to look into the data and analyze the data. And what we're trying to build ourselves is environment of scripts in Python that can affect the data and make changes on their accounts.
Cool. Great. So it's great to learn a bit of background of how you guys are set up. I guess dive in a little bit deeper into how you guys are set up within the UA team. It'd be great to hear a little bit about your media mix as well, in terms of how many channels maybe you guys are running across today, and maybe how that's changed since you've joined.
Yeah, sure. So currently we have around 4 or 5 different channels running. While before we probably had maybe 9 or 10. And what we're trying to do, so this year we're trying to consolidate the amount of channels we use, just because it's not just the budget that you're allocating to it, but there's all the resources that you need to have to be able to make these channels, something out of them, right? Profitable for the business. So the more different channels you have, you need to consider that you're going to have different creatives that are necessary, different creative strategies sometimes, someone to set up the tracking properly and make sure that the tracking works, and also in the campaign manager's mind, they need to adapt themselves to how things work, right? So just think about the way, if I can say names, the way you optimize Iron Source is completely different from the way you should optimize Snapchat or even Unity, which is a video network as well. So if the channel is not we can't scale a channel to 5%, we consider that channel specific is not worth for us the investments in resources for us to scale it.
That's really interesting to hear. So 5% is your kind of general rule of thumb as a minimum. And something you mentioned really earlier is really interesting around how the approach to optimizing across those channels can differ. So do you also then apply that into how you might structure your team? So do you split your UA managers by the type of channel, or is it more by different titles? Or
So here it comes a little. I'm a bit biased on that front. So since my beginning of my journey in marketing, I never liked to be tied down to one specific channel. I found that boring. So basically, I ask my team, what do you prefer? How do you prefer to work? Do you prefer to work across different channels? We have just two campaign managers at the end, so they can make their choice, or do they prefer to be channel specific? And they agreed that they wanted to be able to work across channels just to get a little bit of experience. Of course, you're going to lose the expertise that you could have someone specialized on Facebook or video networks, but at the end you get a team that's more dedicated to work, and they're happier to come to the office, which is better, my point of view.
Okay, brilliant. No, that's really interesting to hear. And in terms of you mentioned you're starting to now look at testing and scaling channels out again. What would be your methodology for choosing potentially a new vendor? And as you know, there's 1,000 different ad networks out there. What's your approach to that?
So there is a list. We have a list, a list of contacts. We add notes. I normally do the first the first contact with the different vendors on the team, and I try to add my own notes, and then basically I'll share with the most senior account manager to see what he thinks about it. I try to go to these industry events as well and see what people in the industry are using, what they think, what they're testing, and that will influence me as well in my decisions. And of course, it's a matter of what I consider is the risk of a channel versus what it can get us, right? So if I know that a specific network is suddenly increasing, the number of apps they have available, so probably it's going to mean that the CPMs are lower, so the risk is going to be low on that front, so maybe it's worth for us to give it a try.
Okay, brilliant. And in terms of when you are testing these new channels that you mentioned, how long would you advise normally giving to test a channel before you decide either it's not working or you want to start scaling out?
So from the experience right now, it depends on the type of channel that we're talking about. If it's something that's heavily manual, let's say, so like a video network where a campaign manager can do all the work themselves. Normally something between a month, 2 months should be more than enough. Now, if it's something that's more programmatic, say Google UAC, you need a lot more time and a lot more money to make the machine work for you. So.
Okay. And in terms of sometimes if these tests don't work out, how do you find in terms of managing this internally? What's the kind of business appetite of? Do they give you kind of a pool to maybe test? Because as we all know, they don't always work, and it can work for maybe one vertical versus another.
It is. I need to defend the propositions on the board. So, by definition, I don't try to risk more than 10-15% of my budget on tests, be it creative testing, channel testing, all these different tests that we have to run. So that's the first rule of thumb that I try to follow myself. But then, of course, every new test I need to get a certain approval from my board that they're okay with it, which is not the most agile way to work, to be honest. But it's understandable when you have investors who want to make sure that the money is safer.
Of course, and I'm sure it's a lot of money at play as well. So.
So
of course. And you mentioned now you're working towards as we come towards the end of the year, you're planning for next year. When it comes to deciding budgets as well, so how does that process look like? Do you guys have like a set budget over a given period, or is it a lot more fluid? And what decides that?
So we have we have a range of budgets. So we have a low and a maximum that we can go for. As an objective for the team, we need to make sure that we at least spend profitably the minimum amount per month. And we can go up to the maximum. We can be 20% more than depends on what's agreed at the beginning. And as I mentioned, it all depends on do we trust ourselves that we're going to be able to deliver a positive ROI for the extra 25%, or should we actually keep it lower and make sure that we are able to reach a good ROI?
Okay, brilliant. No, that's really interesting to hear. And I guess then diving a little bit deeper into more the micro level when it comes to optimizations, what does your kind of week look like at the moment for yourself and your team in terms of making day-to-day optimizations within certain channels?
So the first thing, I don't do optimizations any longer. It's all my team.
Brilliant.
I won't take that from them. All the positive work is done by them. So depends on the size of the channel and the type of channel as well. So let's say we're talking about Facebook, we have an automated script that checks if we should increase or decrease bids and budgets for Facebook, and we run maybe 3 times a week. It depends on volume. Of course, it checks basically what's the amount of if we had enough conversions on each ad set to make a decision based on it.
Okay.
And then we run creative checks as well, at least once a week for the channels and the audiences, and part of the optimization is more of an ad hoc experience at this moment. It's the only thing that we didn't automate.
That's really interesting, and I think a lot of businesses don't always have that automation built in at this stage, so it's really great to see you guys having that. And what's gone into that kind of decision tree at the moment that you mentioned when you're building those automations? Is that something that you first test manually to see if it works and then roll out? And who kind of owns that at the moment? So
the designing of the decision tree is done starting by me, and now the campaign managers is also helping on that aspect, because they were the ones doing the work. It starts by what they do on a day-to-day basis. Of course, it requires a little bit of tutoring and showing them how developers think, because basically you need to change a little bit how traditional marketers will think to be able to build a decision tree. After that point, we define the decision tree. I'll try to code it myself. Normally we get some data engineers annoyed and they'll do it themselves after that.
Okay, interesting. And in terms of, and again, that's great to hear that you've got that room to be able to test your own scripts and methodologies as well. And how are you guys split then when it comes to data and UA? Do you have a specific BI team? And how do you see that process of combining all your data together?
So at this point, we have an external BI team, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to get an internal data person on the team that still responds to the BI team, but it's just working on the UA, on the growth side. We try to create this sense of unique source of truth for the whole business. So one source of data that both growth, products, brands will look at, and it has everything there. And we'll just try to do all the work that we do based on that set of data.
Brilliant. Great stuff. And then moving on to something you touched upon earlier when you were talking about your decision tree around creative as well. Is a creative team something that you guys also, I believe you've brought in-house recently as well?
It was always in-house. So we tested some period having an agency to help us. And the conferences that I've been to, we've been quite vocal about our ads, and they perform really well, it's true. And we've been running the same sort of ads. They're very playful, they're kind of mini games, and they're working extremely well for us for over 3 years maybe. Now the problem is that we're seeing that people are copying us on different verticals, even competitors are copying us, which is not a very positive thing. And we're trying to understand, okay, is there anything else that we could do that could bring good results for us? Not being locked down just on this line of creative strategy, right? And that's why we brought the agency in to see if they could bring some new ideas. Unfortunately, they weren't able to provide anything that worked well, so we decided actually, okay, you know what, we're going to do it in-house. It will be a good exercise for all designers as well. So So I'm confident that next year we'll find a new creative strategy that can work.
Brilliant. And in terms of plans for next year, so as we kind of wrap up the end of the year, what would you say is your biggest challenge that you foresee for next year, and what would you say is your key initiative as well?
So definitely, as I mentioned, the creative aspect, finding a new creative strategy that can work, it's going to be a big important one for us, especially because the gamified ads that we have generate low CPIs, which generate low LTV, and it works. But if we want to add something that maybe will generate higher CPIs but higher LTV, might work as well. But how can we teach the PLTV models to take that into account, etc.? It's going to be quite a big work to be done there. So that's one aspect of it. The other one is how can we refine the PLTV model as well that we have. At this point, it's a subscription-based business. A big majority of our users buy the yearly subscription, which means we only know churn rates 12 months after they join in. So for us to be able to programmatically say, okay, what is the value of each cohort? It becomes quite a big issue if you start thinking about adding free trials as well. Free trials of a week, 2 weeks, a month, how long should it be? If you want to add as well upsell, so if someone is on a monthly plan, you want to try to bring them to a 12-month plan, how is that going to impact the PLTV model as well? So all this stuff, it's also not a nice project that we have at hand. And lastly, I would say we at Peak, we are still, in terms of downloads, we're the largest brain training application in the world. Unfortunately, not so much in revenue anymore. And that's mainly because we're not being able to scale up US, where our competitors are from. So they're being able to beat us there. So we're trying to see, okay, how can we be more aggressive in the US market?
Great stuff. And Thiago, what would you say is one of your, if there's one frustration in the industry of UA and gaming today, what would that be for you?
Ad revenue tracking, it's a really pain right now. I'm controlling myself not to swear. So there is no real solution out there yet that gives you a proper user level. Okay, user X was able to generate X amount of money through the ads at this point.
On a cohorted basis, I guess.
Yeah, but even on an individual basis, like as a user, you don't have that visibility. So it's really hard for you to actually be able to predict a lifetime value on a cohort that just sees ads. And considering that the industry is moving towards hybrid methods of monetization, right? So even us, we're a subscription business, but we're also we're serving ads for free users. And I mean, that's probably how the industry is moving overall, because thanks to hyper casual games and their success. It feels like at this moment, it's such a big thing that's missing completely on our visibility, and for an industry that prides itself on data and being data driven and being the forefront of tech and etc., it's terrible for us. I mean, it's unacceptable. I mean, it shouldn't be that hard for this point. Of course, we have privacy issues, etc., but at least for the developer, we should be able to find out, okay, this user click on this ad and drove us X amount of money from the ad.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Thank you, Thiago, for your time. That's it from us, and until next time, and look forward to seeing you all again.
Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, then give us a like, or if you want to attend one of our private dinners that we're hosting for UA leaders all around the world, then give us an email at uainsiders@appsumer.io.